everyone, and welcome to Midnight Brew and Mysteries. Thank you for tuning into episode number 6 of the podcast. And in today's podcast, we are going to be doing Ouija Board horror stories. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking into the history of the Ouija board and how it works, as well as some Ouija board horror stories. I personally have never experienced a scary moment or spiritual encounter while using a Ouija board, but a lot of people do report that when they used a Ouija board, they were able to talk to spirits and they used it to do a seance. I personally just tried it with a friend of mine in middle school and high school, I think. We tried it a couple times. I believe her parents got her a Ouija board from the store, which is kind of interesting. I feel like my mom would have been like, why do you need a Ouija board? But they did get her a Ouija board. We tried it out together, and I personally felt like I thought she was moving the little thing around, and whatever result we were getting as far as the letters went, it wasn't really making much sense. I personally do not have a story like that to share with you guys as far as my personal experience with the Ouija board, because there really wasn't one. So what is the Ouija board? The Ouija board is basically an automatic writing form of spiritualism whereby words are seemingly created by an external force. The first mention of Fuji or planchette writing dates to around 1100 AD in historical documents from the Song dynasty in China. So believe it or not, people were doing Ouija board-like things long before the Ouija board was actually ever invented. In 1890, Elijah Bond, a local attorney and entrepreneur in Baltimore, Maryland, decided to capitalize upon the craze, and he formalized and patented a commercial talking board. The board was marked with letters of the alphabet as well as the numbers 0 through 9 and the words yes, no, and goodbye. It also came with a small heart-shaped planchette, which was used in seances whenever a spirit wanted to write a message on the board. To use a Ouija board, a group of people gather around a table with the board upon it, and each person places their fingers on the planchette. It is then possible to ask questions of the spirit, with the planchette moving the letters, numbers, or words to formulate a response. The board's design and method remain the same to this day. And you can buy a Ouija board online. They did used to sell them in like Walmart and Target and like department stores. Anywhere they carried, like board games like Monopoly, they would usually have the Ouija board. Whether or not they're still in stores, I'm not sure. I'll try to see if I can find out that answer. I personally have never bought a Ouija board or actually went out to get one, so I'm not really sure. So the rules of the Ouija board go that you should never play alone, that you shouldn't play in a graveyard, that you never ask when you will die, because honestly, I probably wouldn't want to know. You should be polite and respectful of the spirits. Always say goodbye when you're done. So you should always move it to the goodbye when you're done, because you don't want basically the spirits lingering wherever you are, because it's kind of the way of like closing out the session. You should avoid playing Ouija board when you're down, because that kind of energy can attract other negative energy. And don't use the board at home if possible. You should set clear expectations. Don't take everything too seriously, because not every message is going to be life-changing. If it feels wrong, stop. I feel like those are very clear, common sense type of rules. I personally, at this point in my life, have no desire to get out a Ouija board and try to talk to any spirits, but I can see why people do. There's people that, are maybe grieving or feel like they want to communicate with someone that has passed on, or a spirit living in their place that they live, or somewhere that, they go. They might want to communicate with that spirit or with that loved one. And so they use the Ouija board as a type of basically sound box to talk to that spirit. So I can see why people do it. Sometimes people want answers, sometimes people just want to communicate. All very interesting, different little facts about the Ouija board. So now it's time for the game and the Ouija board horror stories. This is where it's gonna get fun. So for today's episode, I'm gonna be sharing with you guys 3 Ouija board stories. 2 of the stories are not true. One of the stories is supposedly true. So one of the stories is a story that I found online that someone shared of something that happened to them when they were using a Ouija board. 2 of the other stories are just made up stories that I made up for you guys. And the game is that I want you guys to try to guess which story is the supposed real story. In my next episode, in episode 7, I'm actually going to share with you guys the answer and you can find out if you were right. Did you guess the right story? Let's go ahead and get started. They're not in any particular order and I'm definitely not going to be giving you guys any hints, but try to guess which of these 3 stories is the supposed real story that somebody submitted online. You do not win anything if you guess correctly. It's just simply kind of a fun little game for you guys to see if you can tell which one is the supposed real story. So let's go ahead and get started. I did print out the stories as I did when I did my other scary stories episode. The house sat at the end of a dead street where no one walked after dark. Even during the day, it looked wrong. The porch sagged inward. Black stains crawled up the siding beneath the windows. The backyard was overgrown with weeds tall enough to hide a person standing still. Ethan had rented it cheap after his divorce because it was all he could afford. The landlord had avoided eye contact when handing him the keys. "Old house," he muttered, "makes noises sometimes." That first week, Ethan heard footsteps upstairs every night. Slow footsteps, not random creaks, not settling wood, actual footsteps moving from one end of the hallway to the other. He tried sleeping with the TV on to drown them out. It never worked. Sometimes he woke up and found the upstairs bathroom light already on. Sometimes the cabinet doors stood open in the kitchen. Once, he found muddy footprints leading from the basement stairs into the hallway. Bare footprints. But it had not rained in days. When he told his friends, Kyle thought it sounded hilarious. "You buy yourself a haunted house," he joked. So, on a stormy Friday night, 5 friends crowded into Ethan's living room with beer, candles, and an old Ouija board Kyle found in an antique store. Rain slammed against the windows, hard enough to shake them. Thunder rolled above the house like distant explosions. Jenna sat furthest from the hallway. "I already hate this." Marcus laughed nervously. "If anything crawls out of that basement, I'm leaving all of you behind." The basement door sat at the end of the hall, closed, at least for now. Kyle placed the board on the coffee table. Everybody touched the planchet. They rested their fingertips lightly on the wooden piece. The room smelled faintly damp like mildew and wet dirt. Kyle grinned. "Spirits of the house, are you here with us?" Nothing happened. Marcus smirked. "Wow, terrifying." Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, the television snapped to black. A freezing gust swept through the room. Jenna rubbed her arms immediately. "Why is it suddenly so cold?" The planchet jerked violently beneath their fingers. Everyone flinched. "Nope," Marcus whispered. "One of you pushed it." "I didn't touch it," Ethan said. The wooden piece dragged across the board. Y-E-S. Yes. Silence swallowed the room. Even the storm outside seemed quieter now. Kyle swallowed hard. "What's your name?" The planchette moved faster. E-L-I-S-E. Elise. Ethan stared at the letters. "That was the woman who lived here before me," he whispered. The candles flickered wildly. Then all at once, bang! Something slammed upstairs. Everyone jumped. Another bang echoed overhead. Then came footsteps. Slow, heavy, crossing the second floor directly above them. One step, another. The sound stopped at the top of the stairs. Jenna's breathing became shaky. "Ethan, you said nobody else is here, right?" Before he could answer, a woman's voice whispered from the hallway. "Get out." The friends froze solid. It sounded close, too close, like someone standing just outside the room. Marcus stood abruptly. "Okay, joke's over." Then the hallway light switched on by itself. At the far end of the hall stood a woman, tall, thin, wearing a pale nightgown stained dark around the stomach. Her wet black hair hung over most of her face, but one eye showed through, wide open, unblinking. Jenna screamed. The lights instantly went out. Pitch darkness swallowed the room. Something moved fast across the ceiling above them, not footsteps this time, crawling. Kyle fumbled for his phone flashlight. The beam snapped on and illuminated the woman standing inches behind Marcus. Her head tilted sharply sideways with a cracking sound. Her mouth stretched open too wide. Marcus spun around screaming. No one was there. Then the basement door creaked open. The smell hit them instantly. Rot. Wet earth. Decay. A voice drifted upward from the darkness below. "He left me here." The Ouija board began moving violently on its own now, the planchette slamming across the letters so hard it scratched the wood. H-E, he, K-I-L-L-E-D-M-E, killed me. Jenna cried openly, "Stop it! Stop it!" Kyle stared at the board in horror. "Who?" The answer came immediately. R-A-Y-M-O-N-D. Raymond. Then B-E-L-O-W below. A loud thump came from the basement, then another, then scratching, something scratching beneath the floorboards. Ethan backed away slowly. The voice came again, no longer sad, now angry. "He still comes here." The temperature dropped so low their breath fogged thickly in the air. Then Marcus looked toward the staircase and whispered, "Guys." Everyone turned. A man stood at the top of the stairs, tall, shadowy, his face hidden in the darkness, but his neck bent at an unnatural angle as if broken. Water dripped steadily from his clothes onto the wooden steps. Drip, drip, drip. The woman suddenly appeared beside him. This time, everyone saw her clearly. Blood covered the front of her nightgown. One side of her skull looked crushed inward. Her dead white eyes locked into Ethan. "You live in my grave." All the lights in the house exploded at once. Glass burst outward. The room plunged into darkness. The friends ran screaming for the front door, but it would not open. Marcus yanked desperately at the handle while Kyle sobbed prayers behind him. Then came the sound from upstairs again. Not walking, running. Heavy footsteps charging down the staircase. Closer, closer, closer. The basement door slammed shut behind them with enough force to shake the walls. Jenna turned just as the hallway light flickered back on for 1 second. The woman stood at the end of the hall holding something dark in her hand. A hammer. Then darkness again. A scream echoed through the house. not from any of the friends, a man's scream, agonized, begging, then silence. The front door suddenly unlocked. The friends stumbled outside into the rain and never looked back. Police searched the house the next morning after Ethan hysterically told them there was a body buried in the basement. Under broken concrete, they found human remains belonging to Elise Harper, missing for 12 years. Detectives reopened the case immediately. The name Raymond Vickers, Elise's boyfriend, matched an old suspect from the original investigation. This time, forensic evidence tied him to the murder. When police arrested Raymond, he reportedly broke down during questioning after only an hour. According to one detective, Raymond kept repeating the same sentence over and over. "She's still in the house." He confessed the next day. He admitted he killed Elise during an argument and buried her beneath the basement floor while she was still breathing. But the part Ethan never told police came 3 nights later. He had already moved out. Most of his belongings were still packed in boxes when he woke suddenly at 3:14 a.m. in his new apartment. His bedroom felt freezing cold. There was mud on the floor beside his bed, bare footprints leading from the doorway to the side of his mattress. And in the darkness beside him, a woman whispered, "You brought him back." Wow, that was a pretty crazy one. That one was very scary. That would definitely terrify me. So with that story down, let's get into our second story. And then we'll have one more, and you guys can decide which one you think is the true story. The Victorian house stood at the edge of town behind a rustled iron fence swallowed by weeds and dead vines. Everyone in Briar's Hollow knew about it. Children dared each other to touch the gate. Teenagers parked nearby at night just to stare at the black windows. Adults avoided even mentioning the place after dark. People called it the Weller House. 30 years earlier, an entire family had been butchered inside. No one forgot the photographs from the newspapers. Blood running down the staircase, handprints smeared across the walls. The mother found in the upstairs bedroom, the father in the dining room, 2 little girls discovered hiding beneath their beds, and the killer was never caught. By the time Ava and her friends parked outside the house on a cold October night, the moon had vanished behind heavy clouds. "This is a horrible idea," Lily whispered from the back seat. "Then stay in the car," Trevor said with a grin. But nobody wanted to be left alone outside either. The house loomed over them as they pushed through the gate. Its tall, pointed roof disappeared into the darkness. Broken windows stared down like empty eye sockets. The front door hung slightly open. Ava noticed claw marks gouged deep into the wood around the handle. "What do you think made those?" she asked quietly. Nobody answered. The air inside smelled rotten, wet wood, mold, something else underneath it all, something sour and metallic. Trevor switched on his flashlight. Dust drifted through the beam like ash. The wallpaper peeled in long strips from the walls. Family portraits still hung crooked in the hallway, their cracked glass reflecting brief flashes of light. A little girl stared out from one portrait. Her eyes seemed oddly lifelike. Lily looked away quickly. "I hate this place." "Come on," Trevor said. "Let's take the Ouija board upstairs." "Why upstairs?" Ava asked. "Because that's where people say the activity happens." Nobody laughed. The staircase groaned loudly beneath their feet as they climbed. Halfway up, Ava noticed dark stains splattered across the wallpaper, brownish black, old blood. The second floor hallway stretched long and narrow before them. Several bedroom doors stood partially open. One door at the very end remained shut. Trevor stopped in the largest bedroom and placed the Ouija board on the floor. This was supposedly the parents' room, he said. Lily looked pale. Can we hurry? The flashlight beams shook slightly as they sat in a circle around the board. Outside, the wind moaned through broken windows, somewhere downstairs. Trevor placed his fingers on the planchette. Everybody touch it. Ava hesitated before resting her fingertips slightly on the wood. The room instantly felt colder. Not cool, cold enough to hurt. Trevor smirked nervously. Spirits of the Weller house? Are you here with us? Nothing happened. For nearly a minute, silence filled the room. Then, the bedroom door slowly creaked shut behind them. Click. Lily gasped. Did someone do that? The temperature dropped further. Their breath fogged faintly in the flashlight beams. The planchette twitched. Everybody froze. It moved slowly across the board. Y, E, S, yes. Trevor's grin disappeared. Ava whispered, What's your name? The planchette jerked violently now. Margaret, Margaret. Ava frowned. Wasn't that the mother's name? Before anyone answered, footsteps echoed somewhere downstairs. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Trevor whispered, There's nobody else here, right? Then came another sound. Children laughing. Very softly from the hallway outside. Lily nearly cried. Stop! Stop right now! The flashlight flickered. The beam briefly illuminated the corner of the room, where a little girl stood facing the wall. Her blonde hair hung in dirty tangles over a white nightgown stained dark red down the front. The light flickered again. She was gone. Ava's stomach twisted painfully. The planchette suddenly moved again. H-E-C-A-M-E. He came. Ava swallowed hard. Who came? The board answered immediately. T-H-E-M-A-N. W-I-T-H-T-H-E-K-N-I-F-E. The man with the knife. A loud bang exploded somewhere downstairs. Everyone screamed. It sounded like a door slamming open. Then footsteps began climbing the stairs. Slow, heavy, creak, creak, creak. The sound stopped outside the bedroom. Silence. Then scratching. Something scratching lightly against the other side of the door. Lily covered her mouth to stop herself from sobbing. The planchette moved rapidly now. H-I-D-E, hide. Trevor whispered, This isn't funny anymore. The scratching grew louder. Then came a man's voice outside the room, deep, wet, breathing heavily between words. Found you. Ava felt every hair on her body stand upright. The bedroom doorknob slowly began to turn. Lily screamed. The door suddenly flew open hard enough to smash against the wall. The hallway beyond was empty, but the cold that rushed into the room felt alive, and with it came the smell. Fresh blood. The flashlight beams darted wildly through the darkness. Then Ava heard whispering, not from the hallway, right beside her ear. He killed us. She spun around violently. Nobody stood there. But Lily suddenly shrieked. Something grabbed her ankle. Everyone watched in horror as Lily's leg jerked sharply backward across the floor. She screamed and kicked wildly. There's something touching me. Ava grabbed her arm and pulled hard. Lily's skin had already turned pale blue where invisible fingers clutched her ankle. Then the pressure vanished instantly. Lily scrambled away, sobbing hysterically. Trevor snatched the flashlight and shouted, Run! The friends bolted from the bedroom as they sprinted down the hallway. Every door upstairs slammed shut, one after another behind them. Bang, bang, bang! Children's laughter echoed through the house, then screaming. Not theirs, the screaming of a family dying, a woman begging, a child crying for help, a man shouting, and beneath it all, the sound of wet chopping. They raced down the staircase. Ava glanced toward the dining room as they passed and nearly collapsed. For one split second, she saw them, an entire family seated around the dining table, motionless, rotting, their throats cut open. Then darkness swallowed the room again. The front door burst open as they reached it, and they stumbled outside into the freezing night air. Nobody stopped running until they reached the street. Lily collapsed against a parked car, sobbing uncontrollably. Trevor bent over, gasping for breath. Ava turned back toward the house. Moonlight now shone faintly through the clouds. That's when she noticed them, small gravestones behind the house, hidden beneath overgrown weeds. 4 of them. The friends slowly approached. The first stone read, Margaret Weller. Beside it, Thomas Weller. Then 2 smaller stones, Emily Weller, age 8, Sarah Weller, age 6. Lily began crying again. Oh my God! At the base of Sarah's gravestone sat a small doll covered in dirt. It looked old, ancient, but perfectly clean fingerprints marked its face, as if someone had just picked it up moments earlier. Then Ava noticed something else carved into the back of the smallest gravestone. Words scratched roughly into the stone. He still visits. A cold wind swept through the yard. From somewhere inside the house came the faint sound of children laughing again. The friends ran back to the car and sped away without another word. None of them ever returned to the Weller house. But years later, Ava still woke some nights to the feeling of someone standing beside her bed in the dark, watching. And sometimes, just before falling asleep, she heard a little girl whisper, "Don't let him find us again." So what do you guys think of that second story? Wow. I was getting a little bit of the chills as I was reading that, I have to say. All right, let's dive into the very last story, and then you guys will be able to make your decision which one you think is the story that is supposedly true. I messed around with the Ouija in pairs and solo for a period of about 2 years. Experienced a lot of strange shit. Now my craziest story, swear it's true. It happened in 1997. One day, I challenged the board and said, give me something independent to verify all the information it was giving me. Predict a news event. Tell me something that is going to happen. It starts moving strange, like it's having a hard time telling me something. I'm paraphrasing here since it was a long time ago, but the exchange went something like this. D-I, D-I-E, D-I, D-I-E, D-I, D-I-E, D-I, D-I-E. I'm like, whoa, something nasty here telling me to die. P-R-I-N-C-E-S-S-D-I-D-I-E. Princess Di Die. Princess Di at the time was young and vital, so of course I'm skeptical. Oh yeah, sure she dies. How does this happen? Car accident? Yeah, right. Like a princess could get killed in a car accident. Where is this accident? Paris? Yeah, right. What the hell is the Princess of Wales doing in Paris? Okay. So when is this going to happen? Ohio. I had a trip to Ohio planned in the coming weeks. So sure, whatever. Princess Di will die in a car crash in Paris while I'm in Ohio. Yeah, right. I go to Ohio, nothing happens. I forget about it. Just one of those weird Ouija sessions that happens every once in a while. Month or so later, I'm in Ohio again. I come out into the living room and everyone is watching TV, glued to a news report. What? I ask. Princess Di, killed in an accident. I was stunned. Wow, so that last one, that's pretty crazy. So basically, the Ouija board predicted something in the news happening, just like the person asked it to. It predicted that Princess Diana was going to die in a car accident in Paris, which is crazy because, as everyone knows, that is what happened. So that's pretty crazy. Wow. Yeah, pretty chilling. If I had experienced that, I would have definitely been freaked out. So what do you guys think? Which of the three stories is supposedly the true story that actually happened? Is it the one with the family that was massacred? The one with the homeowner who moved into a house where a lady was killed and buried beneath the house? Or did the Ouija board predict a news event happening? You'll have to stay tuned. My next episode, I will tell you guys which one was the supposed true story. So what do you think about the Ouija board? Do you think it's actually a portal to be able to speak with spirits and encounter the paranormal? Or do you think it's just some silly game that people play for fun at sleepovers or parties where someone's secretly moving the planchette around? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and let me know if you enjoyed the stories and which one you found the scariest. Thank you so much for tuning in to Midnight Brew and Mysteries, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Be sure to leave me a rating if you will like, and I always do enjoy reading your comments as well. And subscribe to my podcast if you haven't already, or subscribe to the Midnight Brew and Mysteries YouTube channel for more stories like this and more historical paranormal podcast episodes. Thank you again for tuning in, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful day or night. Take care, guys. Bye.